Hey, and welcome to another CS0 Intro to Java video. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to build up strings and draw them to the JFrame. Now, I'm going to build on the video that I previously made. If you have not watched the video on using variables, you need to do so, because in that video, I go through this whole entire file. I demonstrate how to use variables, when to use them, how to reuse them, how to use JOption pane, how to parse ints, and then draw these rectangles with X's over them in the frame. If you haven't watched it, this is what the program looks like. I'm going to run it, go 50 and 50 for my origin, 150 and 150 for the lower right hand corner, so it's going to be a 100 by 100 box. And then I'm going to have a shift, so I'm going to go 300 and 350, and it'll have another one that's shifted over. So I've got two boxes that are 100 pixels by 100 pixels with red X's over them. If you haven't gotten through that entire video on using variables that demonstrates this, you need to go back and watch that, because otherwise this video is totally useless. All right, now what I want to do is I want to draw the origin as a string up above these boxes. So the origin is going to be right here and right here. And I also want to draw how wide and how high they are. So the origin, the height, and the width above these boxes. It's going to be formatted similar to this. So each of them is going to have their X and Y value and their height and width drawn above them. So let's give it a go. We know that we're going to use G2D draw string. So really quickly we'll go through the project. Extends JFrame, we've got all these variables, we saw that in the last video. We've got the main, does everything the main needs to do. We get inputs, saw that in the last video. We've got the height and width being calculated, getting the absolute value of the difference between the Y origin, Y end, X origin, and X end. And that is all the calculations we needed to make, and that's going to set up the conditions for the project. We go down to Paint, call to Super Paint, do our anti-aliasing, and we draw our two rectangles. After we drew our rectangles, we changed the color, and we drew the X's over the rectangles. All right, now on to drawing the strings. We know we're going to be drawing to G2D, and draw string is what we're going to do. Now we want to draw it so that it's just above the rectangle and shifted just a little to the left. Okay, I'm going to start by going for the first draw string. I'm going to go X origin, Y origin, and then I'm going to shift it up by, I don't know, 15. I'm going to shift it left by about 30. All right? So that's going to be where I'll draw the string. Then I need to have a string that's actually going to draw. Okay? So I've got two ints and a string. But I need to put the string here. There we go. So what am I going to put in this string? Well, I want to build that string up first. I'm going to build it to look like this. I'm going to do that through concatenation. So I'm just going to make a string called origin. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to start out by building those parentheses. I know my parentheses essentially need to be like that. But I need to put some variables in between, and they're going to be a comma. But I need to use variables to insert like the X and Y values, but I can't just hard code them. I need to use the X and Y values that were read in by the user, so that this program is dynamic and it responds as we want it to respond. So I'm going to do this through the process of concatenation. I'm going to concatenate these three string literals together. The parenthesis with the comma with the parenthesis. All right? Now, in between the parentheses and the commas, I need to put some of those variables. It's going to be the X and Y origin, right? So I'm going to use X origin there, and then after the comma, Y origin. There we have it. We've got our concatenated string that we are going to use right down here. So the way it's going to print out is with the parenthesis, and then whatever value we enter for X origin, followed by a comma, and whatever value we entered for the Y origin, and then the closing parenthesis. All right, so I've got that stored in a variable here. Now all I got to do, instead of having a string here, pass origin there. Since origin holds this string, if I put it right there, it's going to take that string and it's going to draw it to the screen. Now before this, I want to change the graphics context back to black because I want the writing to be black. g2d.setColor. Color.black. There we go. Let's run it and see if it does what I want it to do. $50, $50, $150, $150, $300, $350. All right, so you can see that my string is drawing right up here. It might be a little bit too high. I'll shift it down a little bit. So I think the origin minus 15 is too much. Maybe I'll just start with origin minus 5. $100, $100, $200, $200, $250, $300. There we go. Oh, that looks great. That's where it's going to draw. So it's going to be right above the origin. It's at 100, 100. And then I'm going to have the height and width drawn right off to the right side. Okay? So I need to build onto this string. I need to concatenate some more. You know what? I might even make a new variable. Height width string. That's a long variable name. That's okay. So all I want to do is have it be spaced away from this parenthesis. And after that parenthesis, I want to put the height. So if I do this, height colon as my string literal, and then I'm going to put the height here. And then I want there to be a little bit of space, width colon, then I'm going to concatenate the width onto it. Excellent. Now, all I've got to do is concatenate these two into my string literal. So now I'm passing into the drawstring origin plus height width string. And now those two things are going to get concatenated together, and they're going to be joined on the J-frame. There we go. That looks pretty good right there. It's 100, 100, height 100, width 100. Now this one's way down here because I made it 450 Y shift, so it's way down here. But I now need to make that same string draw right down here. But it's not going to be the same. It's going to be a little bit different. But I'm still going to reuse these, okay? Here's how I'm going to do it. Copy it, paste it, and now I'm going to modify it. Since I'm using origin over again, I can't declare it to a type for a second time. If I try to do that, I get a naming collision. It says origin already exists. Well, I don't want to do that. I just want to reuse it, so I take the declaration off of it. Same with height width string. I'm going to take the declaration off of it. It doesn't need a type if we're just reusing it. Now, for the X origin on this one, it's not just going to be X origin, it's going to be X origin plus X shift. Now, we have a problem. When you mix concatenation with arithmetic, Java is going to default to concatenation. So let me show you how this is going to look. It's not going to look the way we would want it to look. 100, 100, 200, 200, and then my shifts, 300, 300. Now, that doesn't quite look the way I want it to. We've got the first string, or the second string drawing over the first string. That's not good. So let's shift that. We'll go to our draw string, and we know that we want it to draw at x origin plus the x shift, and y origin plus y shift. That's going to shift it down and shift it over. Okay? Now, let's see if that works. Hint, it won't work. There we go. Now what we have here is we've got, it says 100, 300, 100. Height 100, width 100. Well, it's showing up in the right place, but this portion of it, the x in the in the origin here, is drawing as 100, 300. Let's take a look at y. All right, here's where we're building our origin string. We've got the parenthesis plus x origin plus x shift plus comma plus y origin plus parenthesis. Now let's talk about order of operations. Let's talk about what's actually happening. When Java encounters the plus operator, it can do one of two things. It can either add or it can concatenate. It can't do both. Once it starts concatenating, it spirals. Everything after it is going to concatenate. So the plus operator is going to look to the left and see a string, look to the right and see an int. It's going to make this into a string and concatenate it. This is all a string right now. Okay, so that through x origin becomes a string. Now, this is all a string. It encounters this plus operator. So since the thing on the left of it is a string, this becomes a string as well. So it's going to take the 100 from x origin and the 300 from x shift and concatenate them together. Well, that's not what we want. We want arithmetic to happen there. We want it to actually sum those two things together. So in order to do that, we have to force this operation with parentheses. So I'm going to sum x origin and x shift and concatenate then after to the parenthesis. Let's do the same thing with y origin. We need our parentheses here to force the operation. We're going to add y shift, and then we concatenate it to that parenthesis. All right? Height and width are still going to be the same. Now we have an updated x origin, y origin to reflect where we actually drew it to the frame. And there we have it. This one is at 100, 100 with a height 100, 100. Height and width 100 and 100. This one's at 400 and 400 with a height of 100 and a width of 100. It worked exactly the way I wanted it to work. All right, with the skills that you've gotten in these past two videos, in this video and the previous video, you should be able to do the entire measuring distances project. You'll be able to put the labels at the end of lines as we did here. You'll be able to use variables and reuse them. You'll be able to use parsing integers from strings, and strings that we're getting from JOption pane. Everything that you need to do for that project is right here. Take these skills, move on to the project, and best of luck. Thanks for watching.